do you think that people that are maybe in their 40s or even early 50s, is there time for them to join this movement?
I would say sound yes, but I must also be honest with both things. One of the advantages of, let's say, getting into the FIRE movement young is that you have compound interest working for you, like on your side. So you can, for example, take a bit more, let's say, risk, which you can compensate on the other side or hedge it with a safe, let's say, a safer investment compounding itself. But when you're younger, you are also normally having a smaller income. So that plays in our disadvantage. And when you're older, it's the opposite, actually. You have a larger income, you have a high pay, probably because you have spent time during your career going, let's say, climbing that corporate ladder. And then if you look at the percentages, saving a 30% of the salary of a starter is not the same that saving a 30% of a salary of, like, I don't know, someone that has 15 years of experience. So that works in their advantage. They have, let's say, a bigger capital to work towards this FIRE number.
Hello, and thanks for tuning back in to the Invest Smarter podcast, or if you're joining us for the first time, it's great to have you. Before I introduce our guest today, I want to take a moment to thank everyone who's been listening and supporting the show. This show is for you, and I would like to encourage you to drop me a line at investsmarterpod@gmail.com and let me know what topics you would like covered in the future. Also, the greatest way you can show support to the show right now is to leave a review on Apple. You can also listen to all the episodes going forward on YouTube as well. My goal is simple, and it's to provide value to you and to empower you to make smarter investing and retirement planning decisions. With that said, let's talk about today's guest, Susana Selles. Susana works in the fintech space and is an engineer by trade, but she has decided that the 9-to-5 is not for her forever, and so she is engineering herself an early retirement. She is part of the FIRE movement, which stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. She is also the host of her own excellent podcast called Say Yes to FIRE, Financial Diaries of a Millennial. Today she tells us about what the FIRE movement is, how to put it into practice, how her method is different from other people in the movement, and a whole lot more. We get into why having a budget is so important, and why even if you are already later in your career, it's not too late to join the FIRE movement. We also get into how Susana invests in what she calls asymmetric investment opportunities, and she also talks about why she thinks Bitcoin, blockchain, and cryptocurrencies are going to be a mainstay in the future of finance. So let's get right into this. Here's my conversation with Susana Selles.
All right, Susana, welcome to the Invest Smarter podcast. It's really great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much, David, for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I think you'll have some really interesting insights to share. So why don't we get started by just having you share, what are you up to?
So I'm from Barcelona originally, and I'm living in the Netherlands. I'm currently working in the fintech space, in the payments landscape and banking. So that's a bit of my background, but I've not always worked in this area. I'm a civil engineer. I've studied civil engineer, my bachelor and my master, and I graduated as such. And then I started working as a civil engineer. But then what I realized is that that was really not my thing. And it's then when I kind of started with this passion on finances and technology. And then I changed. And this, why I'm explaining this, I'm explaining this because that was the moment that I realized I was on the FIRE movement. And then I decided to completely follow my passion and my heart and continue.
Well, that's awesome. So that leads me to a really interesting question, because I'm not too aware about what the FIRE movement is. And I bet my audience isn't too familiar either. So why don't you just share a little bit about what is the FIRE movement?
Yes, of course. So FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And as you will say, it is a movement. So it's a community that what it's tries to do is achieve financial independence to be able to retire before, let's say, the traditional age of 65, 67, depending on the country. And basically what we try to do is we use saving methods and investing methods to achieve that financial independence by trying to build enough passive income to sustain ourselves for the rest of our lives.
So that sounds like a really cool goal. Doesn't sound necessarily that easy to do, because in investing and creating income, you take on the risk, right? And there's lots of variables, and that's a kind of a, that's a little different than just earning a paycheck every month. But it's certainly, at the end of the day, if it enables you to be retired, then you get to do whatever you want, which sounds pretty nice. So how do people normally do, sort of put this into practice, this whole FIRE movement?
Yeah, so the very first thing is deciding that you want to be in the FIRE movement, of course, because I think that it's as you said, it's a challenging way of living, I would say. So you need to be very consistent and persistent in difficult times. And you need to know your why you want to retire early, why you want to be financially independent. Once you know this, then you have to decide at what age you want to retire. For example, I want to retire at 37 years old. Right now I'm 27, so I have 10 years to retire, let's say. And once you know a bit the age you want to retire, you need to calculate your FIRE number. And your FIRE number is the amount of capital that you need in order to have enough passive income to live according to your desired lifestyle. So, for example, if I right now can live with $50,000 a year, I would need to achieve certain capital that can give me a passive income stream of $50,000 a year. So that's a bit with the, let's say, the highlights of how people do this. And within this process, you can do it in different ways, because you can build that capital merely by saving. And the very traditional FIRE movement, for example, says that one should save 80% of your income, which I find crazy, impossible.
Yeah. I don't know how anyone could possibly do that. I know I couldn't. I mean, I have a kid, a house, expenses.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's for me, that's not practical. And I feel like in order to be able to do that, you'd be giving up a lot of things in the near term and for your future. I mean, how could you even have a family if you're doing that?
Exactly. You just nailed it here. And that's why the FIRE movement kind of evolved into, okay, what can we do to maybe save less, like a lesser percentage, like, for example, a 50%, a 30%, but what can we do like in return of that? So there is the other side of FIRE, which is the one that I do believe in, because as you said, it's impossible. I also do not see myself saving 80%, no. So what I guess makes my strategy unique, and maybe the newest FIRE people in the community, is that we save a smaller percentage. I currently save between 30 and 40% of my income, but I use that amount 100% to invest it. And I try to take maybe a bit of risk when investing, of course, controlled and with due diligence, but trying to gain, let's say, a larger capital and be able to work with larger amount of cash, I would say.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, I obviously am a huge proponent of investing, because that is what I do for a living, is invest, on behalf of clients and all that. So I do definitely want to get into all of that. But first, I'm still just really curious, more about your why, because like for me, retiring early sounds nice, but I'm not sure what I would actually do, if that makes sense. So I'm curious what you're actually planning on, doing, or do you have plans on what you're going to be doing when you retire at age 37?
Yeah, sure. So I think before I tell my why, I think it's important to understand what do I mean by retiring early. So retiring early is not, for me, stop working, is being free of having to be tied to a 9-to-5 job, having only 20 days of holiday in a year, having to be in this cycle of debt, paying bills, having to wake up early to go to work, etc. So that for me is what I want to break free. And why the age 37? It's very specific, I know, but the reason is that I want to be a full-time mom. And that's very important to me, because I've seen how it is when your parents, well, are not there the whole time. And I think that if I want to have a family, which I want to dedicate all my time to it and be able to choose by myself what time do I dedicate to my kid, to my family, and what time do I dedicate to my projects. And I think that's the second part of my why. I'm a very curious person. I have many wide interests. And for me, it's always very important to keep learning and keep growing. And I got the feeling while working like in a, let's say, traditional job, like 9 to 5, I cannot do that. It's very difficult because, you know, you work and then when you finish, you're tired. And you sometimes, well, I just want to cuddle up in the sofa and watch Netflix, if I'm being very honest here.
Yeah.
So that's very important to me. And also to break this cycle of going to work, groceries, cooking, cleaning, and then going to sleep again, and the cycle repeats.
Yeah, I totally hear you. That cycle can get pretty tiring and boring and lead to feelings of, at least I felt it because I used to be in a 9 to 5. Well, just like, you know, is this really what I want to be doing for like the next 30, 40 years of my life? And, you know, it's like maybe leads to feelings of not being fully fulfilled. Now, I'm just realizing as you're talking that I'm in the FIRE movement without even realizing it, because I'm in a, you know, a job where I'm control my destiny, and I'm looking and seeking, clients, and I want to get to a point where I have a business where I can, delegate most of my day-to-day job, so I can just basically, play golf every day if I want to. So
Exactly.
I'm in the movement. I didn't even realize it. I'm going to be working extremely hard for the next 10 years myself to get to that point. So there you have it. I'm in it.
Well, welcome to the FIRE movement.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm in it. So this is pretty cool. Now you said that you save 30 to 40% and put it all in investments. Do you do like any frugal sort of like lifestyle changes to save more? Because I was wondering if there's any like just tips you would have that are maybe some simple tips. Like I know people always say like, oh, just don't buy your Starbucks coffee, but like, do you put that on yourself, or you don't get to have your delicious coffee?
I think that the most important part of saving is having a budget and stick to it. And another important part of the budget is make it realistic. Because if you're not a person that has these saving habits within you and you're more of a spender, you really need to be like controlling yourself sometimes. So I used to be a spender, 100%. And it took me hard work to really, let's say, work on my good habits. And one of the things that helped me the most, and it's like my number one rule, is before making especially large purchases, asking myself this question. I say, Susana, is this purchase going to be productive towards your life or not? Do you really need it, or is just that you want it? And I'm going to give you a very easy example. I needed a new phone. And I was thinking, okay, what I'm going to buy, what I'm going to do. And I decided that an iPhone 12 was the best option that I could get. And many of my friends were like a bit shaming me, saying, hey, you're in the FIRE movement, why are you buying an iPhone 12? And I was like, look, an iPhone, I think that for my work, for creative working, it's very useful. It's actually productive. I use my phone the whole day to do many things, not just being on social media, but also work. I use it to invest. I use it to check my crypto. I use it, basically for everything. So I'm going to get a good phone and one that is going to be productive in my life. And another example of the opposite would be like, okay, I need a new TV, for example. I would love to have a huge home cinema, but is that really productive? I'm not a cinema expert or anything like that. I was just watching Netflix with friends and my partner. So that's a hell no, you don't need that. And that is, I think, a strategy that a lot of people would be able to apply to their lives.
I think that's really, really important. It's something that I could also really improve upon because I think in order for me to really fully get into the FIRE movement, I need to definitely pull back the spending a little bit. It is harder when you have a child because you really want to buy your child things and all the clothes and all the toys. So maybe I'll just let that go. But the personal stuff like the TVs and all that, no. And a TV is like, it's counterproductive because then you're going to be watching more TV and not doing work.
Exactly.
So it's like, yeah, that's not very good, but that's important. Sticking to a budget is hard though. It's really hard. Like for me, I play golf like every weekend and it's expensive. So that's one place for me personally, but like if I stuck to a budget, I'd have to give up some things, I think. So did you have to go through anything like that? Obviously
Yes.
you did because you said you didn't buy things you wanted, but tell me a little bit
Yeah,
more about the process.
of course. I think my biggest, let's say, um, problem with spending was with clothing and shoes. I love fashion. I've loved fashion since I was a little girl. And when I started having money from my internship and then farther down the road with my job, I had a very hard time not buying clothes. Like, because you want, I don't know, as a woman, sometimes you want pretty things, and we have all this variety of items that we can buy, and then we have the makeup, and then we can do our nails. It's actually really difficult to like stick a budget if you really like to, I don't know, be very feminine in that sense. So that was a big difficulty for me. One of the things that I decided to quit was doing my nails. Doing your nails can be expensive. It can be up to $100 a month. So I decided to quit that, for example. It was difficult, but at the end of the day, it's worth it because I'm seeing my investing accounts grow, and that makes me happy, like, and motivated to achieve FIRE.
Yeah, I feel like once you get some momentum, like what you're saying, when you start, after a few months or after a couple of years even of, consistently adding to the account and watching it grow, even not even from the investment, but just from the additions, which I'm guessing you would agree makes up a huge part of the growth. Obviously, you start to really maybe even get like someone addicted to the saving. Have you felt that at all?
Yes, I am addicted to saving right now. Like I really, let's say, appreciate myself when I make good decisions about money, and I decide to save a little extra. I know, for example, during winter and summer, that becomes really difficult for me. But months like, I don't know, February, that you don't do anything, or at least I don't do anything, then when I save like a 45%, I'm like, yes, this is really good.
Yeah, that's really cool. Clearly, one of the biggest parts of your strategy is the investing. So I'm eager to get into that a little bit. And I saw you mentioned in your profile, you talked about asymmetric investment opportunities. So what do you mean exactly by asymmetric investment opportunities?
Yeah, so I learned that term, I think 2 years ago, and that's been a pillar of my investing strategy. So I think you can understand asymmetric opportunities by investments or bets that can bring you a huge, let's say, potential rewards with not that of a big, let's say, investment or downside or risk. And there are many, actually, in our lives, there are many investment opportunities that are asymmetrical, and we don't even notice it, even in our personal lives. And I can provide you with a couple of examples. For example, when you go to a cocktail party, and you don't know anyone. That's an asymmetric opportunity because you can network and maybe you can find, I don't know, the love of your life. You can find, I don't know, someone that is going to catapult you to, I don't know, your new job position. So that's, for example, an opportunity you can have in a personal level. But then if we talk about money, asymmetric opportunities come from, let's say, those things that are not on the, let's say, wider public eyes, things that are still unknown for most of like the investors in the world, let's say. And those are, for example, small caps. Those are companies that just are starting, SPACs. Crypto is a good example of an asymmetric opportunity, because you can imagine you would have invested, I don't know, $100 in Bitcoin 7 years ago. Now you would have a lot of money. And yes.
Can we go back in time 7 years?
Exactly. And other asymmetric opportunities are, for example, starting a business or writing a book. I think that the main concept behind asymmetric opportunities are the fact that they are scalable. So those times 5, times 10 that we love so much when investing, those are the good asymmetric opportunities.
Okay, so I see what you're saying. So the risk profile is asymmetric because there's more potential reward than the risk, right? So it's not
Exactly.
Right. Okay. I totally agree with you on before we get into some of the more exotic things, at least in my mind, which is like the crypto stuff. I 100% agree with you on small caps and things that are unknown or things that are really out of favor, things that are really not well understood. I definitely think there's lots of asymmetric opportunities there in small cap world. Probably investing in things that are even maybe related to crypto too. There's probably lots of little opportunities that we could get into. So my audience is probably, a little bit older than you are. So maybe they're thinking, well, this fire thing, like I'm not in my 20s, like, can I still even join this? Do you think that people that are maybe in their 40s or even early 50s, is there time for them to join this movement?
I would say sound yes, but I must also be honest with both things. One of the advantages of, let's say, getting into the FIRE movement young is that you have compound interest working for you, like on your side. So you can, for example, take a bit more, let's say, risk, which you can compensate on the other side or hedge it with a safe, let's say, a safer investment compounding itself. But when you're younger, you are also normally having a smaller income. So that plays in our disadvantage. And when you're older, it's the opposite, actually. You have a larger income, you have a high pay, probably because you have spent time during your career, going, let's say, climbing that corporate ladder. And then if you look at the percentages, saving a 30% of a salary of a starter is not the same that saving a 30% of a salary of, like, I don't know, someone that has 15 years of experience. So that works in their advantage. They have, let's say, a bigger capital to work towards this FIRE number. So yes and no. Time is not your friend. Of course, in that sense, you're older and you have not taken advantage of, I don't know, 10 earlier years that you could have been compounding. But at the same time, you work with larger amounts, which will help you with your returns.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you. I think if someone who's older, first they would have to decide or figure out if they actually can save more. I mean, there might be some more fixed expenses that would be harder to shed at that point in their life. But if they're able to just save more and save just for like 5, 6, 7 more years and save really hardcore saving, I think, like you said, the higher income, they can get a lot of the extra juice they need from that, but then make sure that their investments is positioned appropriately for their actual risk and time frame, because they won't necessarily want to be doing the same thing that you would be doing.
Exactly.
how would you suggest somebody analyze their situation to see what they might need to figure out in order to implement a FIRE plan for them?
Yes. So I had exactly the same question that you're asking me. So I spent a lot of effort and time defining, let's say, a method that I call the financial screenshot. It's very simple and it's like very easily applicable. It's called a financial screenshot because it gives you a picture of your financial situation right now. And then you can compare it with your future financial situation or your desired financial situations. And it has 5 steps with 5 metrics. The first step is evaluating your net worth. I know it sounds obvious, but a lot of people do not know what their net worth is. And that's a very easy equation. Net worth is equal to assets minus liabilities. And one of the things here that people should really take into account is what are their liabilities, because I think that let's say throughout our lives they can be hidden liabilities that we don't know about, or things that you consider an asset but it might be a liability. And I can give you an example of a liability that I didn't know I had is for example, I have a rental contract for 2 years. I have signed a contract that I'm obliged to pay for my rent for 2 years. That is a liability because I have to pay my monthly rent multiplied by 12. I was not aware of that until I realized, hey, all the contracts that are, let's say, I'm obliged to pay to someone else, that's a liability. So those little things, or with a phone bill, exactly the same. If you have to pay something and you're obliged to it by law, then that's a liability for you. That's the first step. Assets minus liabilities would be your net worth, and evaluating your net worth and monitoring it throughout time. The second step is your debts, assessing what are your debts. And with that, you need to, let's say, be very confronting with yourself and sit down and write them down. And then order them through the highest interest rate to the lowest interest rate and start paying the highest interest rate. And something here that I always like to mention is that if you have debts that are, let's say, with interest rates that are larger than the average return of the stock market, pay them ASAP.
Yep.
Very important.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's, I think, a good, let's say, advice for someone who might not know that.
So credit card debt, 100%.
Exactly. 100%.
You're not going to get that rate's going to stay the same, but you're not going to get that rate every year in the stock market. Hell no. So make sure you pay that off. I see way too many people with big credit card balances where they could pay them off. It just take a few tweaks, a few things, but they just let them sit. And I'm just like, why?
Yeah, exactly. Like, the curious thing about credit card debt is that in Europe, for example, we do not really have this habit of using credit cards,
Really?
at least in the Nordics. I don't know if you were aware of it, but for example, in the Netherlands, everyone has a debit card and we pay with debit card. So it's very unusual. And even in many restaurants and shops, they don't allow credit cards.
Really?
It's crazy.
That's way healthier than what we do in America. We are throwing our plastic down for everything.
I know. And right now there are a bunch of, let's say, payment methods that are, let's say, buy now, pay later. And I think they're substituting a lot credit cards. And I think that in some sense is positive.
In some sense, positive, yeah. But what do you think in at least maybe when Europe where you are, where people are clearly have better habits developed, maybe it's a more positive. But I feel like here that people will maybe get hurt by the buy now, pay later because they're on the checkout page and they're like, oh, I really shouldn't buy this. I don't have the cash to buy this right now, but wow, I can get 12 months of interest, no interest. And then 12 months go by and all they were paying was the minimum, and they still have, 80% of the thing to pay down, and they're like, oh crap. And then next thing you know, they have basically a credit card.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. The good thing is the no interest, but still, I think you touched a very important point here, is developing good habits and knowing, and I would also say having control defenses. So putting systems of control on your surroundings that help you developing these good habits. I have my partner, for example, we have developed a system that when I'm maybe a bit anxious and I'm a bit stressed, I tend to overspend. So I have a sign and I say banana. And he knows that when I say banana, it's like, I'm struggling, please help me. And take that credit card or debit card, whatever, away from me. That's a very good strategy that it's helping me also a lot, especially in times of stress.
That's so true about stress. I've noticed that myself, when you're having a stressful day or stressful week or stressful month, sometimes it's like self-medication to buy something. It's like a temporary high you get from getting something you want, because it takes your mind off what's stressing you out. So that's a really interesting strategy to have like a word, like a safe word,
Exactly, a safe word.
Yeah. You're just like, yeah, that's really cool. I think I'm going to institute that. Got to come up with my word though. Maybe I'll use banana because you use banana.
We're the banana team.
Yeah.
But if I go back to the method, I think I was in, I think that was part of step 2, which is the depths. But if I may continue, there are 3 more important steps that are relevant for your audience. The third step is defining financial goals. And I'm not a financial planner. I'm not a certified financial advisor. So this is not financial advice from me. It's just I'm expressing an opinion. But defining financial goals, which are usually set over a period of time, can be tricky, especially the mid-term and the long-term. The short-term is easy because we as humans are programmed to think linearly and very short-term. But the medium-term, what is medium-term? Starting from that. So I think that's a very important step, especially if you want to achieve FIRE. And then you have, as a step 4, I would say, monitor your savings. That's also very important. And first, you need to have sufficient cash for emergencies and short-term needs. And then you need to consider if you're getting the best interest rates for the cash that you have available, let's say. And I would say that the last step that your audience or yourself can do before going to this FIRE journey would be evaluating your investments right now. So what are your positions? What are the risks that you are taking? And basically, what is giving you, what can give you the return that you desire for your FIRE number, for example.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, those sound like 5 great steps that I think anyone who's, especially someone who doesn't have a planner or an advisor should definitely work through. And maybe they'll even realize that they could use some help, because I know there's a lot of people that could really use a guide, as a guide who isn't as highly motivated as maybe you are, which is great, which is excellent. So let's just talk about the investments a little bit. I'm definitely curious about I think you have a passion for like blockchain and cryptos.
Yes.
So I'm still on the fence with them because, me as a fiduciary, I have the ethical responsibility legally to, be very careful and manage risks. So I'm still a little, I don't really understand it too good. So I'm still trying to learn about it. So could you break it down as simply as possible? Like, what is blockchain? And then how is it going to impact industries or the way that, we do things every day?
Yes, of course. I think it's already impacting it. But the main thing about blockchain, the very thing that makes it super special and super innovative, is that it allows you to not trust another person, or you don't have to trust another person or a company that you're doing business with. If you look at our lives right now, everything is about trust. Everything is about centralization. Everything is about having a middleman that helps two parties, I don't know, settle each other, or two parties that follow a contract. We need that person. We need that trust, because as humans, we are not designed to trust each other, especially if we do not know each other. So what blockchain was designed for was to allow a system via, let's say, a code, a protocol that establishes trust, having to be another human in between. And that code, what it does is that given a certain circumstances, if that circumstances like are, let's say, correct, if they happen, then the transaction can happen. So the main thing about blockchain and how it started was to, let's say, be a parallel financial system. And if you know, I'm sure you know it, if you know a bit about the global financial system, it's extremely centralized. Every country has central banks that decide certain monetary policies. But apart from that, if you want to make international payments and if you want to do business with other countries, for example, you need to, let's say, as a company, not even as a bank, as a company, you need to have a payment service provider that has access to the banks, and then the banks have access to the central banks, and then the payment is settled. With blockchain, all of these intermediaries are gone. You can send money, like you can send coins from here to Singapore, for example, in 5-10 minutes. There's even like blockchains and coins that right now allow to send payments in seconds. So that's extremely disruptive for the industry, because there is no higher, let's say, high price entry. There is no big wall that you have to climb. You just have to connect to the internet and transact. That's very simple. And it cannot just be applied to the financial system, but it has many other applications. Like, for example, streaming. Streaming doesn't have to be centralized. Streaming can be decentralized, not just having a YouTube. They can be, other examples are like the like supply chain, for example. It can be completely decentralized without having a person that verifies, I don't know, the products, or that acts as a middleman. And if you think about it, a lot of let's say, aspects in our lives can become decentralized without having trust. And here I like to always say an example of my personal life. Why I love, or I would love, blockchain in my, let's say, daily life would be, as an entrepreneur, I need to outsource jobs, tasks. And I usually use Fiverr because I think it works really well. But Fiverr asks for 20% of fee from your purchase, both to the seller and to the buyer. And that's completely because of its centralization. If, for example, and you need Fiverr because you do not trust the other person, that maybe it's in, I don't know, in the other side of the world. You don't know who that person is. So how are two people going to trust each other if they don't know each other? It's impossible. So blockchain, for example, allows you to set a smart contracts, as they called, and set some sort of conditions. And if they comply, then the payment is released. And you don't need any intermediary in between. It's between you and the other person.
Yeah, that's kind of, it's crazy, right? It's kind of like, I'm trying now, you said Fiverr, and I love Fiverr. How would blockchain replace Fiverr though? Because Fiverr, how would blockchain integrate with like Fiverr?
So a blockchain is like a chain of transactions, okay? And those transactions are basically settlements. But the new developments within the blockchain is that you can have layers on top of layers. So a layer on top of the blockchain can be a platform that looks like Fiverr, but operates solely within, let's say, with code. and it settles on the blockchain. So that payment side, that is usually money is the item that we do not trust with other people. So when you have the blockchain and then you have a layer on top of the, let's say, the transactional blockchain, you can build the same platform as Fiverr, exactly the same looking, because that's software at the end of the day. But when you integrate it with the blockchain, you don't need to have, let's say, an intermediary in it.
Like the payment process part of it.
Yeah, the payment process and the trust process. So if, for example, I want to work with you, imagine, and I don't know you, and you have to do some work with me, we would, like, the most easy thing is to go to Fiverr, because then you know that, well, you can trust it, right? But with a blockchain, there could be a smart contract between you and me that allows both parties to trust each other, in the sense of, okay, you are going to do this work, so A, B, C, D, E. We're going to prove it in this way, 1, 2, 3, 4. If these conditions are correct, so they verify, then the payment from me to you is going to be released. And all of this happens automatically. And the conditions are set between you and me.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. I clearly have so much to learn about the blockchain and all of this, because I get it to a certain extent, but then I don't think I'm smart enough to really get it that well. But
no, I mean, I started learning about blockchain, I think 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, and I started from zero, like zero. And I just watched videos, I took courses, I read a lot, I listened to podcasts, and yeah, at some point you start getting it. And trust me, I'm not that smart. So if I get it, you get it.
yeah, I'll get it one day. I'll have to dedicate a whole month just to understanding it. My biggest, the way I always thought about the crypto was as an alternative currency. I get that the blockchain can help in more practical ways, but in terms of Bitcoin being a currency and people using it for exchange of goods and services, I mean, do you think that the centralized established status quo is going to let this happen?
That's a very relevant and important question, and it's a current, let's say, roadblock, I would say, to the fully acceptance of crypto. First of all, I think Bitcoin is mostly used as a store of value, as it goes, let's say, against the inflation process. It's actually, it has a cap. So on the other hand, the blockchain lives in the internet. And the fact that it's decentralized means that everyone participating in the network has a copy of the blockchain. So you would have to stop and shut down the internet around the world, the whole wide world, to stop the blockchain. And that, unless there is an apocalypse and we die tomorrow, in that sense, it doesn't matter anymore. Yeah, it's kind of impossible. And then the thing is that what is funny and interesting to me is that the biggest banks in the world are already using blockchain. Big companies like IBM are using blockchain. PayPal is using blockchain. Square is using blockchain. And for example, China has developed their own digital currency. So I think that at some point there is going to be certain regulations about cryptocurrencies, but I do not think that they're going to be, let's say, hard blocks.
Okay, so you think regulations may be formed to sort of just define how they are going to accept it and put some boundaries on it, but they're going to accommodate it because they realize that shutting down the internet is not really feasible.
Exactly, especially boundaries in financial terrorism or AML, money laundering, these kind of things. There's already a lot of initiatives of implementing KYC with crypto, and in a lot of exchanges, like for example, Binance or Kraken, they do KYC on you. So that's already a regulation that has been implemented.
What is KYC?
Yes, sorry, know your customer.
Okay, I got
It's
you.
basically doing a checkup on a background screening.
Gotcha, because of the ability to be anonymous, right, with blockchain.
Exactly.
So, okay. That would seem like a sensible regulation to me. You think so?
I think so too, because it's true that like some people, not everyone, definitely uses these cryptocurrencies to do illegal stuff. I'm not going to deny that because that is happening. I mean, it's in the news once in a while. But for the people who actually want to use these currencies for the greater good, I think doing KYC wouldn't matter, honestly. It's just like what we are doing right now.
Yeah. Yep, that's good. Let's talk about what you are doing then regarding your investments, if you don't mind sharing. I'm super curious about what you're actually doing regarding crypto and other maybe stocks, or like what are you up to and what are some of your ideas?
Yeah, of course. So I do not believe in ETFs and index funds. I know it sounds a bit extreme, but I do believe that if you do your own research and due diligence, you can pick good stocks as well as you can pick good investments in general. So in that sense, I like to handpick my stocks and understand it from, let's say, a fundamental point of view, but mostly taking into account the networking effect, the scalability, the cost advantage, this kind of, let's say, strategies. So I like to invest in tech and entertainment. I think those two big industries have a lot to offer, especially tech. And within tech, of course, we have like the big giants, which I do invest in as more of like a safer investment. But there's also like tech companies that just started, or not just started, but just came public or a few years back, that are also really interesting. And then I have around, I would say, 60% of my portfolio in stocks and 40% in crypto.
Wow, that's a big chunk in crypto. So,
yes.
Yeah. So how do you get exposure to crypto? I'm guessing you're not just all in Bitcoin.
No. I believe in Bitcoin, but I do believe that other projects have also a huge potential. What I do with crypto, because you need to understand that cryptocurrencies are not like companies. You cannot analyze balance sheet or let's say, I don't know, cash flows. The basic fundamentals you cannot, the financial fundamentals you cannot analyze because that doesn't really exist. So what you do is you try to understand their protocol. And within the protocol, they can tell you about let's say, the security aspect, which is very important. They can tell you about the cost advantage, which that relates to the fees, the transactional fees. And the most important thing is the scalability. And that within blockchain is something that it's a hot topic right now, because many of these coins or these projects, these blockchains, have different ways of, let's say, validating the transactions. And some are, for example, proof of work, when you have all the miners like Bitcoin. I'm sure you have heard of it, and Elon Musk saying it spends a lot of energy. And the second part is proof of stake, which is more relying on the community and, let's say, on you putting a certain amount of that coin and trusting that it's gonna, people trust you that you have like a large amount invested, so you are not gonna, let's say, hack the chain. So those are important things. And another thing that I like to check is the use case. So whenever I don't know, I look at the new coin, I always try to imagine myself using it. So saying, hey, would I use this in my day-to-day life? And I think that the biggest example is a cryptocurrency that it's called Pancake Swap. It's a DeFi coin, and DeFi stands for decentralized finance. And I'm using it actually to stake coins. And that means literally getting interest, so compounding them. So I'm not just getting the growth of the coin, so not just like, let's say, the appreciation, the value, but I'm also getting interest on that value. And how that works in crypto is if there is a higher demand of the network, they ask you to stake your coins so they can use your coins to validate transactions in the network, because it's all about validation. I know it sounds complicated, but I think that the most important thing is
real quick. So are you like almost in a sense lending your coins to have them be used to be validating transactions, and then you get compensated for that?
Exactly.
Oh, nailed it. That's cool.
Yeah, you nailed it. See,
yeah,
it's not.
It's kind of like it's kind of like shorting the stock, kind of.
It's to me, it's like I'm doing something useful with my coins.
Yeah.
And I'm helping the network, the blockchain that I believe in, to transact. It's like offer liquidity, basically.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I feel like we could do a whole episode on just how to analyze the coins, because you're making it now sound like, to me, like there's a whole process to analyzing. Like, I like to analyze stocks. I also love picking individual stocks, right? So I'm used to like looking at all the different, the different things to look at: the balance sheet, the strategy, the margins, the competitive advantage, all that stuff. But there's a whole list of things you're talking about that you can look at for coins to sort of try and evaluate value, right? So
Exactly.
I find that fascinating. So maybe we will do another podcast one day on just that, because I feel like you could talk about that
amazing.
forever.
And and actually, like now that you mention it, I have a podcast of my own where I explain these kind of things. I base it on explaining my FIRE strategy based on asymmetric investments and cryptocurrencies and blockchain. So if it's called Say Yes to FIRE. So in case your audience or you yourself are interested, you can as well listen to my podcast. But definitely, I would love to come back and make like a good analysis strategy for coins.
Yeah,
Definitely.
that'd be cool, because that's something that I would love to incorporate in what I'm doing every day at some point. I just need to make sure I understand it. So yeah, I'd love to do that. Yeah, we're definitely running out of time here, but I do feel like we could keep going. But so you mentioned your podcast. Is there anything else is there anything else you do to help people with FIRE or anything like that besides the podcast, which I'm guessing is really good and educational?
Yeah, so aside of the podcast, I also have a website where I post some blogs. It's called sayyestofire.com. And what I like to do also is based on the episodes of the podcast, I create templates or frameworks that I give for free. So people can, let's say, download it and use it themselves. I try to make it very user-friendly and simple because, I mean, I love simplicity and practicality. I'm an engineer, so that's in my core.
Mm-hmm.
And apart from that, I also help some people with not giving advice, but explaining a bit what I'm doing. So basically educating in some sessions, one-on-one, and also in mastermind groups. And I have an Instagram page where I post visual educational content, which is Say Yes to FIRE also. And same on Twitter.
I think I followed you on Instagram, so I'll be checking that out. But all right, that's awesome. So we're out of time. So I just want to thank you again for coming on. I thought that was really interesting. I know I learned a lot. I hope my audience did. And I hope you come back.
Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, you just have to give me a ping and I'll be there. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited.
Awesome. I can't wait to let release this to the world and let everyone hear about this awesome stuff.
Email us at investsmarterpod@gmail.com with questions to be highlighted on the show. Thanks for listening, and keep investing smarter.